The morning mist clung to the towering spires of New Earth Central Terminal like ghostly fingers, reluctant to release their grip on the massive structure that had become humanity's greatest achievement since the Great Reconciliation. Marcus Chen pulled his worn customs uniform closer against the chill as he walked through the employee entrance, his footsteps echoing in the vast corridor that stretched beneath the main terminal floors. Above him, through the reinforced glass ceiling, he could see the graceful silhouettes of dragons gliding alongside commercial aircraft in the dawn sky. Their scales caught the first rays of sunlight, creating brief flashes of emerald, gold, and deep crimson against the pale morning clouds. It had been 300 years since the Treaty of Scales was signed, ending the devastating Dragon Wars and ushering in an era of unprecedented cooperation between the two species. "Morning, Marcus," called Janet Rodriguez from behind the security checkpoint. The middle-aged woman had worked customs longer than anyone at the terminal, her graying hair always pulled back in a practical bun, her sharp eyes missing nothing that passed through her scanners. "You're early again," Marcus nodded, adjusting his inspector's badge. At 28, he was one of the youngest customs officials at the terminal, but his attention to detail and gentle manner with travelers had earned him the respect of his colleagues. "The 6 a.m. international flights start arriving soon. Figured I'd get the scanners calibrated before the rush." The customs hall was a marvel of engineering and diplomacy. Massive archways accommodated both human passengers and their dragon companions, while specialized landing platforms jutted out from the terminal's sides to allow dragons to dock directly with their human partners. The smell of aviation fuel mixed with the distinct metallic scent that dragons carried, a reminder of their ancient connection to the Earth's minerals and precious stones. Marcus made his way to Station 7, his assigned inspection booth. The morning light streaming through the terminal's crystal dome illuminated dust motes dancing in the air, each one catching the light like tiny stars. He powered up his equipment, running through the standard checks he'd performed thousands of times before. X-ray scanner, chemical detector, dimensional measurement tools, all the technology necessary to keep New Earth safe while respecting the rights of travelers from across the rebuilt world. "Beautiful morning, isn't it?" The voice came from above. Marcus looked up to see Dracor's massive head peering down from the observation platform built into the terminal's upper levels. The ancient dragon's scales were a deep midnight blue, almost black, with silver edges that had grown more pronounced with age. His eyes, large as dinner plates, held an intelligence that had witnessed centuries of human history. "Good morning, Dracor," Marcus replied with genuine warmth. "Enjoying the sunrise?" The dragon's response was a low rumble of contentment. Dracor had made the terminal his home for nearly 50 years, serving as both guardian and unofficial greeter for nervous travelers experiencing their first dragon encounter. His presence was comforting, a living symbol of the peace that had transformed their world from the ashes of war into something beautiful. Marcus began arranging his inspection tools with methodical precision. Each had its place. Each served a purpose in maintaining the delicate balance between security and hospitality that New Earth Central Terminal represented. The morning shift was usually quiet, giving him time to prepare for the busier afternoon flights, when families and business travelers would flood through the gates. The first announcement echoed through the terminal's speakers with its familiar melodic chime. "Attention passengers and companions. International Flight 447 from the European Federation is beginning its approach. All customs stations prepare for processing. Dragon companions should proceed to designated landing zones for reunion with their human partners." Through the tall windows, Marcus could see the approaching aircraft flanked by a formation of dragons. It was always a breathtaking sight, technology and ancient wisdom working in harmony. The plane's engines hummed their mechanical song, while the dragon's wings beat in synchronized rhythm, their natural magic somehow making the entire formation more stable and efficient than either could achieve alone. The terminal began to stir with increased activity. Ground crews wheeled baggage carts into position, while dragon handlers prepared the specialized equipment needed to assist the massive creatures with their landings. Marcus watched a young handler, probably new to the job, nervously checking his safety harness as a golden dragon circled overhead, waiting for clearance to land. Marcus remembered his first day on the job, how intimidated he'd been by the sheer presence of the dragons. Now, years later, he found their company more comforting than that of most humans. There was an honesty in dragons that he appreciated. They couldn't lie, couldn't deceive. What you saw in their ancient eyes was exactly what they felt. His terminal beeped, indicating that the first passengers would be arriving at his station within minutes. Marcus straightened his uniform and checked his equipment one final time. The X-ray machine hummed quietly, ready to peer into the belongings of travelers from distant corners of the world. The chemical sensors were calibrated to detect everything from explosive materials to exotic foods that might carry diseases. He had no way of knowing that in just a few hours, his routine morning would be shattered by a discovery that would challenge everything he believed about dragons, humans, and the true history of their world. The truth, waiting in a mysterious piece of luggage, would reveal that the peace between species had been built on foundations far more extraordinary than anyone could imagine. For now, though, the terminal continued its peaceful morning awakening around him, as routine and predictable as the sunrise itself. The routine of the morning was shattered by a sound Marcus had never heard before, a deep, mechanical grinding that seemed to come from the sky itself, accompanied by the desperate roaring of dragons in distress. He looked up from his inspection station to see something that made his blood run cold. A spacecraft, unlike anything in Earth's fleet, was descending through the cloud cover with visible damage to its hull. Twisted metal sparked as atmospheric friction tore at the craft's alien surfaces. But what truly alarmed Marcus was the behavior of every dragon in the vicinity. Dracor, usually so calm and composed, was now standing at full height on his platform, his massive wings spread wide, releasing a series of haunting calls that echoed through the terminal's vast spaces. "What in the name of the treaty is that thing?" Janet's voice carried across the customs hall, her usual composure cracking as she stared at the approaching vessel. The terminal's emergency systems activated with a series of sharp tones. "Attention all personnel. Unknown aircraft requesting emergency landing clearance. All passengers and dragon companions please remain calm and follow evacuation protocols to designated safe zones." Marcus watched through the reinforced windows as the strange craft touched down on the emergency landing strip, its alien engines finally falling silent. The vessel was roughly the size of a small passenger plane, but its design was completely foreign. Smooth curves where human craft had angles, surfaces that seemed to shift color in the light, and symbols etched into its hull that hurt to look at directly. "Marcus, Station 7, you're with me," came the voice of Director Harrison over the intercom. "All other customs personnel maintain positions for standard passenger processing." Marcus felt his heart racing as he gathered his portable inspection equipment. Director Harrison was a stern woman in her 50s who had worked her way up through every department in the terminal. If she was calling him specifically, it meant this situation was serious enough to require their most detail-oriented inspector. As he made his way toward the emergency response area, Marcus couldn't help but notice how every dragon in the terminal was reacting to the alien craft's presence. Their usual calm had been replaced by an agitation he'd never witnessed before. Some paced restlessly on their platforms, while others maintained vigil-like positions, their ancient eyes fixed on the mysterious vessel. Dracor's behavior was the most disturbing. The old dragon, who had been a constant, reassuring presence for as long as Marcus had worked at the terminal, was now trembling. His midnight blue scales seemed to shimmer with an inner light, and his massive claws gripped the stone platform so tightly that small cracks were beginning to appear in the reinforced concrete. "Director Harrison," Marcus called out as he approached the emergency bay. "What do we know about the craft?" The director turned to face him, her expression grave. "Not much. It appeared on our sensors about 20 minutes ago, transmitting a distress signal in 17 different languages, including some we can't identify. No flight plan, no registration, and whoever's flying it seems to understand our air traffic protocols better than they should." Through the bay's massive windows, Marcus could see the alien vessel more clearly. It sat on the tarmac like a sleeping beast, its hull pulsing with a faint rhythmic light. Ground crews kept their distance, uncertain how to approach something so clearly not of earthly origin. "The pilot made contact through standard radio channels," Director Harrison continued, checking her tablet for updates. "Says they have urgent cargo that requires immediate customs inspection. Specifically requested our most trusted human customs official. That would be you, Marcus." The words sent a chill down Marcus's spine. How could an alien pilot know anything about Earth's customs procedures, let alone request a specific type of inspector? Have they emerged from the craft yet? That's the strange part. They say they won't leave their vessel until we guarantee safe passage for their cargo through customs. They're asking for what they call the old protocols, whatever that means. A deep, Resonant roar echoed through the emergency bay as Dracor's voice carried from the main terminal. The sound was unlike anything Marcus had ever heard from the ancient dragon. It held notes of recognition, of desperate warning, and something that sounded almost like grief. "Sir," came a voice over the radio from the control tower. "The alien pilot is requesting to speak directly with the customs inspector, who will be handling their cargo. They say it's a matter of species survival." Marcus felt the weight of the moment settling on his shoulders. In all his years at the terminal, he'd handled diplomatic pouches from world leaders, precious artifacts from archaeological expeditions, and even dragon eggs being transported between continents. But nothing had prepared him for this. "Patch them through to my portable unit," Marcus said, accepting the radio handset from Director Harrison. Static filled the air for a moment before a voice emerged, unmistakably alien, yet speaking perfect English with an accent he couldn't place. "Inspector Chen, I presume. Your reputation for fairness and attention to detail has reached even my people." "This is Inspector Chen," Marcus replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "State your name, origin, and the nature of your cargo." "I am Navigator Zix of the Wanderer's Path. My origin is complicated. As for my cargo, it is a single container that holds the answer to a question your species has been asking for 3 centuries. Why do dragons weep when they look at the stars?" The radio nearly slipped from Marcus's hands. Every child on Earth had heard the old stories about dragons and their mysterious connection to the night sky, but most dismissed them as folklore. Yet something about the alien's words, combined with Dracor's distressed calls echoing through the terminal, made Marcus believe this was far more serious than anyone realized. "Inspector Chen," the alien voice continued, "I carry the final message of a dying civilization. What I have with me will change everything your people believe about their relationship with dragons. But I warn you, once this container is opened, there will be no going back to the comfortable lies that have kept your world at peace." Marcus looked back toward the main terminal, where Dracor's silhouette was visible against the morning light, the ancient dragon still calling out in that heartbreaking voice that seemed to carry the weight of centuries. Marcus approached the alien vessel with measured steps, his portable inspection equipment secured in a specially designed case that had never been used for anything quite like this. Director Harrison walked beside him, her hand resting on the emergency communicator that would summon security forces if things went wrong. Behind them, a small team of technicians maintained a respectful distance, their cameras and sensors recording every moment for posterity. The craft itself was even more extraordinary up close. Its hull seemed to be made of a material that shifted between metallic and organic, pulsing gently like a living heartbeat. The symbols etched into its surface appeared to move when observed directly, rearranging themselves into new patterns that somehow felt familiar, yet utterly alien. "Navigator Zix," Marcus spoke into his radio as they reached the craft's base. "We're prepared to begin the inspection process. Will you be exiting your vessel?" A section of the hull suddenly became transparent, revealing the interior of the craft. What Marcus saw inside challenged every assumption he'd held about alien life. The pilot was humanoid, but clearly not human, tall and slender, with skin that held an opalescent quality similar to dragon scales. Their eyes were large and multifaceted, reflecting the morning light like cut gems. Most striking were the vestigial wings that extended from their shoulders, delicate membrane structures that seemed purely ceremonial. "I prefer to remain within my ship's protective field," the alien replied, their voice now coming through a speaker system rather than radio. "What I carry is too precious to risk, and my physiology is not compatible with your atmosphere for extended periods." Director Harrison stepped forward. "Before we proceed, we need to establish legal protocols. Are you seeking asylum, diplomatic status, or simply emergency aid?" The alien's expression, somehow readable despite their non-human features, showed what could only be described as profound sadness. "I seek none of those things, Director Harrison. I am here to fulfill an oath made by my people long before your civilization learned to speak. I am here to return what was stolen." A thunderous roar echoed across the tarmac as Dracor appeared overhead, the ancient dragon having somehow made his way to the emergency landing area. His massive form circled the alien craft, his calls now taking on a different tone, less distressed, more hopeful. "The dragon knows," Navigator Zix observed, watching Dracor's aerial display. "They remember, even when your people have forgotten. This makes the delivery both easier and more painful." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. What exactly are you returning, Navigator? The alien reached into what appeared to be a storage compartment and withdrew a container unlike anything Marcus had ever seen. It was roughly the size of a large suitcase, but its surface was covered in the same shifting symbols as the spacecraft. More disturbing was the way it seemed to emit a faint light that pulsed in rhythm with Dracor's wing beats overhead. This contains the memories of the Dracani Exodus, Navigator Zix said solemnly. The true record of why the dragons came to your world and what price humanity paid to save not just one species, but an entire galactic alliance from extinction. Director Harrison's tablet began beeping frantically as readings from the craft's sensors spiked. Inspector Chen, I'm detecting energy signatures that are off any known scale. Are you certain this is safe to bring into the terminal? Navigator Zix's large eyes focused on Marcus with an intensity that was almost overwhelming. Inspector Chen, your species has a phrase, the truth shall set you free. But I must warn you, this truth comes with a burden that your people have carried unknowingly for 3 centuries. Once you see what is in this container, the comfortable simplicity of your world will be forever changed. Marcus looked up at Dracor, who had now landed nearby and was watching the proceedings with obvious anxiety. The dragon's ancient eyes met his, and in them, Marcus saw something he'd never noticed before, a deep, abiding sorrow that seemed to stretch back through countless years. Navigator, Marcus said slowly, if this container holds historical records, why is its arrival causing such distress to the dragons? And why bring it to a customs inspector rather than to historians or scientists? The alien's reply sent chills through everyone present. Because, Inspector Chen, what happened 3 centuries ago was not just a historical event. It was a customs transaction. The greatest customs transaction in galactic history. Your ancestors processed the entry of an entire refugee population into your world, and in doing so, agreed to terms that saved millions of lives at a cost your people have never truly understood. The container in Navigator Zix's hands pulsed brighter, and Draco's calls became more urgent. In the distance, Marcus could see other dragons from across the terminal gathering, their massive forms creating shadows on the tarmac as they assembled for what felt like a vigil. The dragons are not native to your world, Inspector Chen, Navigator Zix continued. They are refugees from a war that consumed half the galaxy, and humanity offered them sanctuary when no other species would. But the price of that sanctuary, the customs duty that your ancestors agreed to pay, the alien's voice broke slightly. It is a debt that has been quietly collected for 300 years, and most of your people never knew they were paying it. Marcus felt the weight of destiny settling on his shoulders, as he realized that his routine morning inspection was about to uncover the greatest secret in human history. The question was whether he was ready to accept the responsibility that came with such knowledge. Director Harrison, he said quietly, I recommend we move this inspection to the secured facility. Whatever's in that container, I have a feeling it's going to change everything we thought we knew about our world. The secured inspection facility lay deep beneath the main terminal, accessible only through a series of reinforced corridors that had been designed to handle the most sensitive diplomatic cargo. As Marcus led the procession down the sterile hallways, the weight of the mysterious container seemed to grow heavier with each step, despite Navigator Zix carrying it effortlessly in their elongated arms. Director Harrison had activated the highest security protocols, meaning that only essential personnel were present. Marcus, herself, Dr. Sarah Chen, from the terminal's xenobiology department, no relation to Marcus despite the shared surname, and Security Chief Rodriguez. The walls around them were lined with sensors capable of detecting everything from radiation to exotic matter, yet none of them showed any readings from the alien container. That's impossible, Dr. Chen muttered, studying her handheld scanner. According to these instruments, the container doesn't exist. It's occupying space, we can see it, but it's not registering on any of our detection equipment. Navigator Zix's opalescent features showed what might have been amusement. Your technology measures matter and energy as you understand them. This container exists in dimensions your science has not yet discovered. It was crafted by the Dracani themselves, using techniques that predate your solar system. The secured chamber was a marvel of engineering, a spherical room 30 feet in diameter, with walls that could withstand both physical and energy-based attacks. Emergency containment systems lined the ceiling, ready to deploy force fields or neutralizing agents at a moment's notice. In the center stood a single inspection table, illuminated by lights that could shift across the entire spectrum as needed. As they entered the chamber, Marcus noticed something extraordinary happening above them. Through the transparent aluminum ceiling, he could see dragons gathering on the surface. Not just Dracor, but dozens of dragons from across the city, their massive forms creating an aerial congregation unlike anything he'd ever witnessed. Their calls, muffled by the facility's soundproofing, created a harmony that resonated through the building's structure. "They know what's coming," Navigator Zix observed, following Marcus's gaze. "The memories I carry have been calling to them across the void. Dragons never forget, Inspector Chen, even when they wish they could." Director Harrison activated the chamber's recording systems, ensuring that whatever was about to be revealed would be preserved for history. "Navigator Zix, before we proceed, I need your assurance that opening this container poses no physical threat to my personnel or to the terminal above us." The alien's large eyes reflected the chamber's lights as they considered the question. "The container holds no weapons, no toxins, no pathogens, but Director Harrison, I cannot promise that what it reveals will not be devastating in other ways. Truth, as your people say, can be the sharpest blade of all." Marcus stepped forward, his inspection equipment arranged on the table. "Navigator, I need to understand something. You mentioned that this was the result of a customs transaction 3 centuries ago, but our records from that period show no evidence of any non-human contact." "Your official records, perhaps not," Navigator Zix replied, placing the container gently on the inspection table. "But check your folklore, Inspector Chen. Check your stories of the Dragon Wars, of the Great Reconciliation. Ask yourself why dragons appeared on your world exactly 317 years ago, with no evolutionary predecessors, no fossil record, no explanation for their sudden presence." Dr. Chen's tablet began displaying historical data. "The Navigator is correct. The first recorded dragon sighting was in 2708, during what we now call the Emergence event. 17 dragons appeared simultaneously at locations around the globe, all bearing what appeared to be battle scars. The Dragon Wars began immediately afterward, lasting nearly 50 years before the Treaty of Scales was signed." "The battle scars were real," Navigator Zix said softly. "They were survivors of the Crimson Nebula War, the greatest conflict in galactic history. 17 shipmothers, each carrying thousands of refugees, arriving at the only world in the known galaxy where they had been promised sanctuary." Security Chief Rodriguez spoke up for the first time. "Promised by whom? Earth had no spacefaring capability in 2708. We could barely maintain orbital stations." Navigator Zix's expression grew even more sorrowful. "Promised by a group of humans who had been contacted secretly by the Galactic Council. Your ancestors, Inspector Chen, were not randomly chosen to be customs officials. This profession runs in your family because your great-great-grandfather was one of the 7 humans who agreed to the terms of the Dracani Exodus." Marcus felt the world spinning around him. "That's impossible. My family has always worked in customs, but we're not. We're just ordinary people." "Ordinary people who agreed to extraordinary terms," Navigator Zix replied. "Your ancestor, Chen Wei-Ming, was one of 7 humans who were transported to the Galactic Council Station to negotiate the Sanctuary Agreement. He and 6 others agreed that Earth would accept the Dracani refugees, provide them with territory to establish homes, and help them rebuild their civilization." The alien's hands moved over the container's surface, and the symbols began to glow more brightly. "But Sanctuary came with a price, Inspector Chen. The Galactic Council demanded payment for the privilege of hosting refugees from a galactic war. Payment that could only be made in the one resource that Earth possessed in abundance, something that the advanced civilizations of the galaxy had lost long ago." "What resource?" Director Harrison asked, though her voice suggested she was beginning to understand the magnitude of what they were about to learn. Navigator Zix looked directly at Marcus, their multifaceted eyes reflecting depths of ancient sorrow. "Compassion, Inspector Chen. Pure, unconditional compassion. The one thing that your species possessed, that the rest of the galaxy had forgotten in their technological advancement. The payment your ancestors agreed to was simple. Humanity would love the dragons as their own, without question, without reservation, until the debt was considered paid." The container pulsed with brilliant light, and above them the dragon's calls reached a crescendo that seemed to shake the very foundations of the terminal. Marcus realized that his entire world was about to change, and there was no going back. Marcus stared at the container as Navigator Zix's words sank in. The chamber fell silent, except for the distant harmonics of dragon calls filtering through the facility's structure. His hands trembled slightly as he reached for his inspection tools, the routine gestures of his profession feeling suddenly inadequate for the magnitude of what lay before him. "Inspector Chen," Navigator Zix said gently, "before you open this container, you must understand what you will see. These are not just historical records, they are living memories, preserved in crystalline matrices that will allow you to experience the events as if you were present. You will feel what your ancestor felt when he made the agreement. You will understand the true cost of the sanctuary Earth provided." Dr. Chen looked up from her instruments, her face pale. "Living memories? That's theoretically impossible with our current understanding of neuroscience and data storage." "Your current understanding, yes," the alien replied, "but the Dracani civilization was millions of years old when the war began. They had learned to preserve not just information, but the emotional and sensory context that gives meaning to experience. What you are about to witness is not a recording. It is a direct transfer of consciousness across time." Director Harrison stepped closer to the table. "Navigator, if opening this container will transfer alien memories into Inspector Chen's mind, I need to know what safeguards are in place. I won't risk my officer's mental health for historical curiosity." Navigator Zix's opalescent skin shimmered with what appeared to be approval. "Your concern for your subordinates' welfare is precisely why humanity was chosen, Director. The safeguards are built into the memories themselves. Inspector Chen will experience the events, but he will retain his own identity and judgment. The memories will feel like vivid dreams once they conclude." Marcus looked around the chamber at his colleagues, then up through the transparent ceiling, where the silhouettes of gathered dragons were visible against the morning sky. Dracor's massive form was directly overhead, the ancient dragon's eyes seeming to look straight down at him through layers of reinforced material. "The dragons are waiting," Marcus observed. "They know what's in here, don't they?" "They have been waiting for 300 years, Navigator Zix confirmed. "Waiting for the day when the truth could finally be revealed to humanity. The burden of keeping this secret has weighed heavily on them. Dragons, you see, are incapable of lying. Every day they spend with humans, knowing the truth of their arrival, causes them emotional pain." Security Chief Rodriguez checked his communications device. "Sir, I'm receiving reports from across the city. Dragons everywhere are exhibiting unusual behavior. They're gathering in groups, calling out. Some are crying? Is that possible?" "Dragons weep when they remember what they lost," Navigator Zix explained. "Today they weep because they remember what humanity sacrificed to save them. Inspector Chen, the container will only open for you. Your genetic markers carry the authorization codes that your ancestor embedded in his family line." Marcus approached the table, his customs training taking over despite the extraordinary circumstances. He began with his standard visual inspection, noting the container's dimensions, the quality of its construction, the way the symbols seemed to pulse with their own internal light. But as his hands moved closer to the container's surface, something unexpected happened. The symbols began to change, rearranging themselves into patterns that somehow felt familiar. Without conscious thought, Marcus found himself understanding their meaning. "For the children of Chen Wei-Ming, in gratitude for the gift of sanctuary and love." "My God," Dr. Chen whispered, studying her readings. "Inspector, your biometric signatures are changing. It's as if the container is scanning you at a genetic level." Navigator Zix nodded solemnly. "The container recognizes you as Chen Wei-Ming's descendant. It is now keyed to your specific genetic signature. Only you can open it, and only when you are ready to accept the responsibility that comes with the knowledge inside." Marcus felt a strange sensation, as if the container was somehow communicating with him directly. Images began to flash through his mind. Vast starships fleeing through space, massive dragons wounded and desperate, and a small group of humans in a chamber not unlike this one, making a decision that would change the course of galactic history. "I can feel it," Marcus said, his voice barely above a whisper. "There's something alive in there. Not physically alive, but conscious somehow." "The memories of your ancestor," Navigator Zix confirmed. He asked that his experiences be preserved, so that someday his descendants would understand the choice he made. "Inspector Chen, when you open this container, you will not just learn history, you will live it. You will stand in the Galactic Council chamber as Chen Wei-Ming did. You will feel the weight of representing your entire species in negotiations that would determine the fate of millions of refugees." Above them, Dracor's call changed pitch, becoming something that sounded almost like encouragement. Other dragons joined in, their voices creating a symphony that seemed to resonate with the container itself. Marcus placed his hands on the container's surface, feeling warmth spread through his fingers. The symbols blazed brighter, and suddenly he understood exactly how to open it. The knowledge came not from his training or experience, but from somewhere deeper, a genetic memory that had been waiting 3 centuries to be activated. "Whatever happens," Marcus said to his colleagues, "make sure this is all recorded. If I'm about to learn why dragons and humans have lived in harmony for 3 centuries, the world deserves to know the truth." With movements that felt both foreign and familiar, Marcus began to trace patterns on the container's surface, his fingers following the glowing symbols as they rearranged themselves under his touch. The chamber filled with a low humming sound, and the container began to open, revealing an interior that seemed to contain swirling galaxies of light and memory. The moment Marcus's fingers completed the pattern on the container's surface, the world around him dissolved into streams of light and sensation. He was dimly aware of his body standing in the secured chamber, but his consciousness was suddenly elsewhere, experiencing events that had happened 3 centuries before his birth. He was Chen Wei-ming, standing in a chamber that defied human understanding. The walls curved impossibly, seeming to extend infinitely in all directions, while somehow remaining enclosed. Around him sat beings from across the galaxy, creatures of crystalline beauty, entities of pure energy, and forms so alien that his mind struggled to process them. At the center of the assembly loomed the Galactic Council's primary representative, a being of such ancient majesty that stars seemed to orbit around its presence. Human delegate Chen Wei-ming, the council representative's voice resonated through dimensions Marcus couldn't name. "Your species has been chosen to host the survivors of the Dracani civilization. Are you prepared to hear the terms of sanctuary?" Marcus, experiencing the memory as Chen Wei-ming, felt the overwhelming responsibility of speaking for all humanity. Around him, 6 other humans stood with equal gravity, representatives chosen from each continent to make this momentous decision. The weight of their choice would affect billions of lives, both human and Dracani. "We are prepared to listen," Chen Wei-ming replied, and Marcus felt the courage and compassion that had driven his ancestors' words. "But first we must understand, why Earth? Why humanity?" The council representative gestured, and the chamber filled with images of the Crimson Nebula War. Marcus watched in horrified fascination as entire star systems burned, as civilizations that had existed for millions of years were reduced to ash and memory. The scope of destruction was beyond human comprehension, a war that had consumed half the galaxy's inhabited worlds. "The Dracani were peacekeepers," the council representative explained, "guardians of wisdom and balance in the galaxy. When the Crimson Empire rose, spreading its philosophy of conquest and domination, the Dracani stood against them. They fought not for territory or resources, but for the principle that intelligent life has inherent worth." Marcus saw through Chen Wei-ming's eyes as the images shifted to show the final battle. Massive dragon ships, each one a living creature of incredible size and beauty, making their last stand against the Crimson Fleet. The sight of ancient dragons, beings of power and majesty, being systematically destroyed by an enemy that valued only strength, brought tears to his eyes. 17 ship mothers survived, the council representative continued. 17 ancient dragons, each carrying thousands of their young in protective chambers within their bodies. "They are dying, Chen Wei-ming. The wounds they suffered in the final battle are beyond our ability to heal. They need a world where they can rest, where their young can be born and raised in safety." "But why Earth?" another human delegate asked. Marcus recognized her as Sarah Kim, a diplomat from the Asian Federation. "We're barely a spacefaring civilization. Surely there are worlds better equipped to help them." The council representative's response shook Marcus to his core. "Because Sarah Kim, of all the species we have encountered in our millions of years of existence, humanity alone has retained the capacity for unconditional love. You love without asking for evolutionary advantage. You care for creatures that cannot benefit you. You sacrifice for principles that bring you no material gain." Images flashed through the chamber. Humans caring for injured animals, parents sacrificing for children who would never repay them, individuals risking their lives to save strangers. Marcus felt Chen Wei-ming's pride in his species, tempered by the growing understanding of what was being asked of them. The Dracani young, when they are born, will imprint on the first beings they encounter. the council representative explained. This imprinting shapes their entire emotional development. If they imprint on beings of compassion and love, they will carry those qualities throughout their extremely long lives. If they imprint on beings of coldness or calculation, they will become creatures of coldness themselves. Chen Wei-ming stepped forward, and Marcus felt his ancestors' resolve crystallizing. What exactly are you asking of humanity? We are asking you to love them, the council representative said simply. To welcome the Dracani not as useful allies or powerful protectors, but as family. To raise their young with the same care you would show your own children. To accept them into your world, not as guests or refugees, but as belonging. Marcus felt the emotional weight of the moment, as Chen Wei-ming and the other delegates exchanged glances. The decision they were being asked to make would fundamentally change human civilization. Yet through his ancestors' eyes, Marcus could see that there was only one choice they could make. And the cost? Chen Wei-ming asked, though Marcus could feel that his ancestor already knew the answer would be profound. The council representative's form shifted, showing what appeared to be deep sadness. The cost, Chen Wei-ming, is that humanity will be forever changed by this act of compassion. Your species will become the caretakers, not just of the Dracani, but of the principles they represented. You will inherit their role as guardians of empathy in a galaxy that has largely forgotten what compassion means. As the memory continued to unfold, Marcus began to understand the true magnitude of what his ancestor had agreed to and why the dragons had carried the weight of this secret for 3 centuries. The decision made in that impossible chamber would ripple through history in ways that neither species could have fully anticipated. But even as the memory deepened, Marcus could feel that the most shocking revelations were yet to come. The memory deepened, and Marcus felt Chen Wei-ming's growing understanding of the true complexity of the agreement. The Galactic Council representative gestured again, and the chamber filled with new images, projections of Earth's future if humanity accepted the Dracani refugees. The cost we spoke of is not payment in your conventional sense, the council representative explained. It is transformation. By choosing to love the Dracani unconditionally, humanity will unknowingly sacrifice something precious, your innocence regarding the true nature of the galaxy. Marcus watched through his ancestors' eyes as the images showed Earth as it would become, a world where dragons and humans lived in harmony, but where humanity would slowly, subtly, begin to carry emotional burdens they had never been meant to bear. Each act of compassion toward the Dracani would create a psychic resonance that would spread across the human population. I don't understand, Chen Wei-ming said, and Marcus felt his ancestors' confusion. How does loving them harm us? The council representative's form seemed to grow more solid, more present. The Dracani are empathic beings, Chen Wei-ming. Their emotions, their memories, their pain, all of it resonates through psychic connections with those who care for them. When your people love the Dracani, they will unknowingly begin to share in the collective grief of an entire civilization that has lost its home. The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. Every human who had ever felt an inexplicable sadness when looking at dragons, every moment of melancholy that seemed to come from nowhere, every unexplained longing for something lost, it had all been humanity unconsciously sharing in the dragons' grief for their destroyed homeworld. The Dracani will never intend to cause this burden, the council representative continued. They will not even be aware it is happening. But the psychic connection formed through love and care is bidirectional. As humans give compassion to the Dracani, they will receive in return echoes of trauma from the greatest loss in galactic history. Chen Wei-ming stepped back, the weight of this revelation clear in his posture. You're asking us to sacrifice our emotional well-being for an entire species? Not asking, the council representative corrected gently, informing. The choice must be made with full knowledge of the consequences. And Chen Wei-ming, there is more. The psychic resonance will be strongest in the bloodlines of those who make this agreement. Your descendants, and the descendants of the other delegates, will serve as unconscious anchors for the connection between species. Marcus felt a chill of understanding as he realized why his family had always been drawn to work with travelers, why they seemed to intuitively understand the needs of different species. His entire family line had been shaped by an agreement made 3 centuries ago. My children? Chen Wei-ming asked, his voice heavy with parental concern. My grandchildren? They'll carry this burden without knowing why. They will carry it, the council representative confirmed, but they will also be blessed with an extraordinary capacity for empathy and understanding. Your bloodline will produce natural peacemakers, mediators and guardians. They will be humanity's interface with the pain of the galaxy, but also its greatest source of healing. The chamber filled with new images, scenes of Marcus's own family throughout the generations. His great-grandmother comforting a young dragon who had lost its parent, his grandfather establishing the first human-dragon cooperation protocols, his father working tirelessly to improve conditions for dragon refugees, each generation unknowingly carrying forward the legacy of Chen Wei-Ming's choice. "There is one final aspect you must understand," the council representative said, its voice taking on a tone of profound gravity. "The agreement we are proposing is not temporary. The psychic connection, once established, will be permanent. Should humanity ever choose to withdraw their compassion from the Dracani, the sudden severing of the emotional bond would be catastrophic for both species." Marcus watched as Chen Wei-Ming processed this information, feeling his ancestors' growing understanding of the true magnitude of the decision. Humanity wasn't just agreeing to house refugees, they were agreeing to an eternal emotional partnership that would fundamentally alter the psychological development of both species. "And if we refuse?" Sarah Kim asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The council representative's response was swift and final. "The 17 shipmothers will die within the year. The thousands of Dracani young they carry will perish with them. The last remnant of a civilization that stood as guardians of compassion for millions of years will be extinguished forever." Chen Wei-Ming looked at his fellow delegates, and Marcus felt the moment when his ancestors' decision crystallized. Despite understanding the full cost, despite knowing that he was condemning his own bloodline to carry an ancient grief, Chen Wei-Ming's response came without hesitation. "We accept," he said firmly. "Humanity will provide sanctuary for the Dracani. We will love them as our own, regardless of the cost to ourselves." As the words left Chen Wei-Ming's lips, Marcus felt a surge of energy that seemed to connect him directly to every dragon that had ever lived on Earth. In that instant, he understood the true source of Dracor's ancient sorrow, the reason why dragons seemed to carry the weight of centuries in their eyes, and why his own family had always felt drawn to serve others, even when it brought them no personal gain. The memory began to fade, but not before Marcus caught one final image, the face of the council representative, and in that alien visage, an expression of profound respect and gratitude that would be passed down through the collective memory of an entire galaxy. Marcus gasped as the memory faded, his consciousness snapping back to the secured chamber like a rubber band released under tension. The container before him was now completely open, its interior empty except for swirling motes of light that slowly dimmed to nothing. Around him, Director Harrison, Dr. Chen, and Security Chief Rodriguez stared with expressions of concern and fascination. "Inspector Chen," Director Harrison rushed forward as Marcus swayed on his feet. "Are you all right? You've been standing motionless for almost 10 minutes, but your vital signs were extraordinary." Marcus looked up through the transparent ceiling and saw Dracor's massive form directly overhead, the ancient dragon's eyes fixed on him with an intensity that now made perfect sense. In those ancient eyes, Marcus could see recognition. Dracor knew that the secret had finally been shared. 10 minutes? Marcus asked, his voice hoarse. It felt like hours. I was there in the Galactic Council chamber when my ancestor made the agreement. He turned to Navigator Zix, who had remained silently respectful throughout the memory transfer. "It's all true, isn't it? Every dragon on Earth is a refugee from the Crimson Nebula War." Navigator Zix nodded solemnly. "Every dragon, Inspector Chen. The 17 shipmothers who arrived on your world were the last of their kind. In your terminology, they were pregnant females, each carrying between 2,000 and 3,000 young in biostasis chambers within their bodies. Those young have been born over the past 3 centuries, raised by human families who never knew they were caring for the children of an ancient alien civilization." Dr. Chen looked up from her instruments, her face pale. "That would explain the population numbers. We've always wondered how dragon populations remain stable when their reproductive cycles seem so slow, but if they were essentially being born from a finite reservoir..." "The births are nearly complete," Navigator Zix confirmed. "Within the next 50 years, the last of the Dracani young will emerge. After that, dragon births will depend on natural reproduction, which is indeed much slower than your scientists have observed." Security Chief Rodriguez stepped forward, his expression troubled. "Navigator, if what Inspector Chen experienced is true, then humanity has been unknowingly sharing in the emotional trauma of an entire species for 3 centuries. The psychological implications are staggering. Marcus felt a wave of understanding wash over him as he realized the full scope of what they had learned. That's why we've always felt such a deep connection to dragons. Why human families who care for dragons often report feeling inexplicably sad or nostalgic. We've been carrying their grief for their lost homeworld without even knowing it. Above them, Dracor's call echoed through the facility, but this time the sound carried notes of relief rather than distress. Other dragons responded from across the city, their voices joining in what sounded like a song of liberation. "They're relieved," Marcus observed, looking up at the congregation of dragons visible through the ceiling. "They've been carrying this secret alone for 300 years. Navigator Zix's opalescent features showed something that might have been a smile. "Dragons are incapable of deception, Inspector Chen. Every day they have lived among humans, loving and being loved. They have known the truth of their origins and the price humanity unknowingly paid for their sanctuary. The emotional burden of that knowledge has been immense." Director Harrison activated her communication device. "This is Director Harrison. I need immediate conference calls with the heads of all major governments. What we've learned here today, this changes everything we thought we knew about human-dragon relations." Dr. Chen was frantically taking notes on her tablet. "The psychic resonance would explain so many anomalies we've observed over the years. The way humans and dragons seem to communicate without words, the emotional bonds that form so quickly between species, the way children who grow up with dragons often display enhanced empathy." Marcus looked at the empty container, then at Navigator Zix. "There's something I need to understand. If the Galactic Council knew this would happen, if they knew humanity would unconsciously carry this burden, why was the agreement structured this way? Why not tell us the truth from the beginning?" Navigator Zix's expression grew thoughtful. "Because, Inspector Chen, genuine compassion cannot be manufactured or performed. If humanity had known from the beginning that caring for the Dracani would cause you emotional pain, your responses would have been calculated rather than instinctive. The psychic connection requires authentic love, not obligation." The implications hit Marcus like a physical force. So humanity's greatest strength, our capacity for unconditional love, was both what saved the dragons and what made us vulnerable to sharing their pain. "Precisely," Navigator Zix confirmed. "And now that the truth is known, both species must decide how to move forward. The psychic connection exists and cannot be broken without catastrophic consequences, but knowledge of its existence will inevitably change how it functions." Above them, Dracor's silhouette moved away from the ceiling, and Marcus could hear the ancient dragon's calls changing tone again. This time they sounded like invitation. "He wants to speak with you," Navigator Zix observed. "Dracor has been waiting 3 centuries to have a conversation with a human who knows the truth. He was one of the original 17 ship mothers, Inspector Chen. He has carried thousands of his children to safety, watched them be born and raised by human families, and never been able to express his gratitude for the sacrifice your people made." Marcus felt tears forming in his eyes as he realized that Dracor, the gentle, wise dragon who had been a comforting presence throughout his years at the terminal, was actually an ancient being who had survived the destruction of his entire civilization and lived for centuries with the knowledge of humanity's unconscious sacrifice. "Navigator Zix," Marcus said quietly, "before I go to speak with Dracor, I need to know what happens now. How do we move forward with this knowledge?" The alien's response would change the course of human-dragon relations forever. Marcus emerged from the secured facility to find the terminal transformed. Dragons from across the city had gathered on every available surface, perched on control towers, lining the runways, and filling the massive passenger platforms. Their presence created an atmosphere of solemnity and anticipation, unlike anything the terminal had ever experienced. Passengers and staff watched in awe as these magnificent beings maintained their vigil, their ancient eyes all focused on the spot where Marcus stood. Dracor waited on the main observation platform, his massive form somehow managing to appear both powerful and gentle in the afternoon light. As Marcus approached, he could see details in the ancient dragon's appearance that he had never noticed before. Faint scars along his flanks that spoke of old battles, a weariness in his posture that came from carrying unimaginable burdens, and most remarkably tears flowing from his great eyes. "Inspector Chen," Dracor's voice resonated through both sound and something deeper, a psychic connection that Marcus could now feel clearly for the first time. "After 3 centuries of silence, I can finally speak the truth to a human who will understand. Marcus climbed the access stairs to the platform, his legs unsteady as the weight of the moment settled on him. Standing before Dracor, he was struck by how different everything felt now that he knew the dragon's true nature. This wasn't just the terminal's friendly guardian, this was a survivor of galactic genocide, a being who had lived through the destruction of entire star systems and somehow found the strength to love again. "Dracor," Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm so sorry. All these years, we never knew what you had sacrificed, what you had lost." The ancient dragon lowered his great head until his eyes were level with Marcus's. "Do not apologize, young Chen. Your ignorance was a gift. It allowed you and your people to love us purely, without the burden of pity or obligation. Every human child who has ever laughed while riding on a dragon's back, every family that has welcomed one of our young into their home, every act of casual kindness you have shown us, all of it was genuine because you did not know what we were." Around them, other dragons began to descend to lower platforms, and Marcus realized that many of them were crying as well. The sight of these powerful ancient beings openly weeping was both heartbreaking and somehow beautiful. "The tears," Marcus said, understanding flooding through him. "You've been grieving for 3 centuries, haven't you? For your lost homeworld, for your people who didn't survive." Dracor's great head nodded slowly. "We grieve, yes, but not only for what was lost. We grieve for the burden we unknowingly placed upon humanity. Every time a human feels inexplicably sad in our presence, every moment of melancholy that seems to come from nowhere, that is our pain bleeding through the psychic connection your ancestors' love created." A smaller dragon, one Marcus recognized as Lyra, who often visited the terminal with children from the local schools, landed nearby. Her silver scales caught the light as she spoke with a voice like wind chimes. "The children sense it most clearly," Lyra said. "Human children who grow up with dragons often become healers, counselors or caretakers. They carry our grief, but they also develop an extraordinary capacity for compassion. Your species has evolved in response to our presence." Marcus felt the truth of her words resonate through his bones. His own family's dedication to service, their natural ability to comfort others, their instinctive understanding of emotional pain, it all stemmed from his ancestors' decision 3 centuries ago. "But why reveal the truth now?" Marcus asked. "Navigator Zix said the births are nearly complete, but there must be more to it." Dracor's expression grew grave. "Because, Marcus Chen, the time of choosing is upon us. The psychic connection that has bound our species together was meant to last only until the last of the Dracani young was born and safely integrated into human society. That time approaches within your lifetime." The implications hit Marcus like a thunderbolt. "You mean the connection can be severed?" "It can," Dracor confirmed, "but the choice must be made consciously, by both species, and with full understanding of the consequences. If humanity chooses to sever the connection, both of our peoples will return to their natural emotional states. Humans will no longer carry our grief, but dragons will lose the enhanced empathy that has come from 3 centuries of love." Lyra moved closer, her voice soft but urgent. "If the connection is severed, Marcus, dragons will gradually become what we were before we came to Earth, powerful, intelligent, but emotionally distant. We will lose the capacity for love that humanity taught us." Marcus felt the weight of yet another impossible choice settling on his shoulders. "And if we maintain the connection, then humanity will continue to carry our pain," Dracor said solemnly, "but both species will continue to evolve together. Humans will develop even greater psychic sensitivity, and dragons will learn to consciously share the burden, rather than unconsciously imposing it." Around them, the gathered dragons began to sing, a harmony that seemed to encompass both joy and sorrow, hope and loss. The sound was unlike anything Marcus had ever heard, and he realized it was the first time in 3 centuries that dragons had been able to express their full emotional range to a human who could understand its meaning. "How long do we have to decide?" Marcus asked. Dracor's answer sent chills through him. "Navigator Zix brought more than just memories, Marcus Chen. The container also held a psychic beacon that has announced to the entire galaxy that the Dracani refugees have successfully integrated with their host species. Other civilizations will now begin to take notice of Earth." "What does that mean?" "It means," Dracor said, his ancient eyes reflecting depths of cosmic knowledge, "that humanity's age of innocence is ending. The galaxy will no longer see Earth as a primitive backwater. You will be recognized as the species that successfully preserved Dracani civilization through an act of pure compassion. That recognition will bring both honor and danger. Marcus realized that the choice facing humanity wasn't just about maintaining an emotional connection with dragons. It was about their entire future relationship with the galaxy. As the dragon's song continued to fill the air around the terminal, Marcus noticed something extraordinary happening in the sky above. Points of light, far too bright and numerous to be stars, began appearing in the daylight sky. They moved with purpose, descending through Earth's atmosphere, in formations that spoke of advanced technology and coordinated intelligence. "The beacon has been answered," Navigator Zix said, appearing beside Marcus on the platform. The alien's opalescent skin seemed to shimmer with excitement and apprehension. Representatives from across the galaxy are arriving to witness what humanity has accomplished. Dracor's great head turned skyward, his ancient eyes tracking the approaching vessels. "I had hoped we would have more time to prepare your people for this moment, Marcus Chen. The galaxy moves quickly when it discovers something unprecedented." Marcus watched in awe as the first of the alien ships became clearly visible, craft of impossible beauty and complexity that made Navigator Zix's vessel seem primitive by comparison. Some appeared to be living organisms, their hulls pulsing with organic rhythms. Others were geometric marvels that seemed to bend light around themselves. A few defied description entirely, existing as shifting patterns of energy that hurt to observe directly. "How many civilizations are out there?" Marcus asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "The current Galactic Council represents over 10,000 species," Navigator Zix replied, "but not all of them are peaceful. The beacon that announced your success also revealed Earth's location to civilizations that view compassion as weakness and emotional connection as a vulnerability to be exploited." Director Harrison's voice crackled through Marcus's communication device. "Inspector Chen, we need you back in the facility immediately. We're receiving communications from multiple alien sources, and some of them don't sound friendly." As Marcus began to move toward the facility, Dracor's voice stopped him. "Wait, young Chen. Before you face what is coming, you must understand the full scope of what your ancestors' choice has set in motion." The ancient dragon's eyes began to glow with an inner light, and suddenly Marcus could see beyond the immediate arrivals to the vast network of civilizations that populated the galaxy. Through the psychic connection, Dracor shared visions of worlds beyond imagination, crystal cities that sang with harmonic frequencies, ocean planets where thoughts moved through water like electric currents, and ancient empires that had turned compassion into a lost art. "The Galactic Council has been searching for 3 centuries for proof that empathy could survive advanced civilization," Dracor explained. Every species they had encountered followed the same pattern: technological advancement leading to emotional detachment, power breeding indifference to suffering. Humanity's success with the Dracani refugees proves that evolution and compassion can coexist. Marcus felt the weight of realization crushing down on him. "We're not just being recognized for saving the dragons, we're being seen as proof that advanced civilization doesn't have to be emotionally sterile." "Precisely," Navigator Zix confirmed, "and that makes Earth both precious and dangerous to different factions within the galaxy. Some civilizations will want to study and learn from humanity's achievement. Others will see emotional connection as a threat to their own cold efficiency." Above them, the alien vessels had formed a complex pattern in the sky, each one maintaining careful distance from the others. Marcus could see that some ships were beautiful works of art, while others appeared purely functional, designed for efficiency rather than aesthetics. Lyra, the silver dragon, spread her wings nervously. "I can sense their intentions through the psychic network," she said, her melodic voice tinged with worry. 3 distinct factions have arrived. The Preservers seek to protect what humanity has achieved. The Integrators want to bring Earth into the galactic community immediately. And the Purists?" She paused, her scales darkening with fear. "What about the Purists?" Marcus asked, though he dreaded the answer. Dracor's voice grew heavy with ancient knowledge. "The Purists believe that emotional connection weakens species and makes them vulnerable to exploitation. They see the human-dragon bond as a contamination that must be either purified or eliminated." Through his communication device, Marcus could hear the chaos erupting in the facility below. Multiple alien voices speaking in languages that hurt to hear, translation systems struggling to keep up with concepts that had no human equivalent, and underlying it all, the sound of Director Harrison trying to maintain some semblance of order. "Inspector Chen," came a new voice through the communication system, cold, mechanical, and utterly without warmth. "You are the human who activated the Dracani memory archive. We require immediate audience with you to discuss the contamination that has occurred on this world." Marcus felt every dragon on the platform tense at the sound of that voice. Draco's scales shifted to a darker hue, and his claws extended involuntarily. "Purists," Draco growled. "They speak of emotional connection as if it were a disease. They have arrived first, which means they consider Earth a priority threat." Navigator Zix's features showed what could only be described as fear. "Inspector Chen, you must understand. The Purists once controlled a third of the galaxy. They were defeated in the Crimson Nebula War, but they have rebuilt their strength in the centuries since. If they determine that the human-dragon connection represents a threat to galactic order, they'll try to sever it by force," Marcus finished, understanding flooding through him. The cold voice came through the communication system again. "Inspector Chen, you will report to our vessel immediately for psychological evaluation and potential correction. The emotional contamination you exhibit must be assessed before it can spread to other species." Around Marcus, every dragon began to growl simultaneously, a sound that seemed to come from the Earth itself. In that moment, he realized that the choice facing humanity was no longer whether to maintain their connection with the dragons. It was whether they would be allowed to keep it at all. "Dracor," Marcus said, his voice steady despite the fear coursing through him. "If I go to them, will I come back?" The ancient dragon's response chilled him to the bone. "Not as yourself, Marcus Chen. The Purists do not correct. They erase and replace. If you enter their vessel, the human who emerges will no longer be capable of love." Marcus stood on the platform surrounded by dragons, feeling the weight of 3 centuries of hidden history and the future of 2 species resting on his shoulders. Above them, the Purist vessel descended with mechanical precision, its hull a stark matte black that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Unlike the other alien craft with their artistic curves and organic designs, this ship was purely functional, a tool designed for efficiency and control. "I won't go," Marcus said firmly, his voice carrying across the platform. "Whatever authority they think they have, Earth is a sovereign world. They can't simply demand that I submit to their correction." Dracor's massive form shifted, positioning himself protectively between Marcus and the descending ship. "The Purists do not recognize sovereignty that stems from emotion, Marcus Chen. In their philosophy, any civilization that makes decisions based on love rather than logic has forfeited its right to self-determination." The other dragons on the platform began to arrange themselves in a defensive formation, their ancient instincts recognizing a threat that transcended species boundaries. Lyra moved closer to Marcus, her silver scales now glowing with an inner fire that spoke of power long suppressed. "They made one critical error in their calculations," she said, her melodic voice taking on harmonics that resonated through Marcus's bones. "They underestimated what 3 centuries of love has created between our species." Through his communication device, Marcus could hear the chaos in the facility below escalating. Other alien voices were protesting the Purist presence, and he caught fragments of heated exchanges between representatives of different galactic factions. "Inspector Chen," came the cold Purist voice again, "you have 60 seconds to comply with our request, or we will consider this world in violation of galactic psychological health protocols. Correction procedures will be implemented on a planetary scale." The threat sent chills through Marcus, but it also ignited something deeper, the same courage that had driven his ancestor to accept an impossible burden for the sake of strangers. "Dracor, can they actually do what they're threatening?" The ancient dragon's eyes blazed with fury. "They can try, Marcus Chen, but they make the same mistake they made during the Crimson Nebula War. They assume that power comes only from technology and cold logic. They have forgotten that love, when threatened, can become the strongest force in the galaxy." Suddenly, Marcus felt something extraordinary happening. The psychic connection that had linked humans and dragons for 3 centuries, the emotional bond that had operated unconsciously in the background of their shared existence, suddenly blazed to full consciousness. He could feel every dragon on Earth, could sense their collective determination to protect the species that had saved them. But more than that, he could feel something else, human emotions responding across the globe. Every person who had ever loved a dragon, every family that had raised dragon young, every child who had formed an unbreakable bond with their scaled companion, All of them were suddenly aware of the threat, and all of them were angry. "Navigator Zix," Marcus called out to the alien, who had remained silent during the purest threats. "You said other factions are here too. Are any of them willing to help?" Navigator Zix's opalescent features showed what might have been hope. "The Preservers will defend your right to choose your own path, Inspector Chen, but they are bound by Galactic Council protocols. They cannot act unless you formally request their protection." "Then I formally request protection for Earth and all its inhabitants, human and dragon alike," Marcus declared, his voice carrying across the platform and somehow through the psychic connection to every corner of the globe. The response was immediate and overwhelming. A vessel of stunning beauty descended from the fleet above, its hull appearing to be made of crystallized music, surfaces that sang with harmonic frequencies that spoke directly to the soul. At the same time, Marcus felt the human response growing stronger. Across Earth, people were stepping outside their homes and workplaces, standing with their dragon companions in silent but unmistakable solidarity. "The Preservers acknowledge your request," came a new voice through the communication system, warm, melodious, and filled with ancient wisdom. "Earth is hereby granted protection under the Emotional Heritage Preservation Act. Any attempt to forcibly alter the psychological development of this world's inhabitants will be considered an act of galactic vandalism." The purest response was immediate and furious. "The contamination has spread beyond acceptable parameters. Preemptive correction is now authorized to prevent further psychological infection of the galaxy." Marcus felt the purest ship's weapons powering up, energy signatures that registered on every dragon's enhanced senses. But instead of fear, he felt a strange calm settling over him. Through the psychic connection, he could sense something the purists had not anticipated, the true extent of what 3 centuries of love had created. "Draker," Marcus said quietly, "show them what they're really up against." The ancient dragon's response was not a roar or a display of physical power. Instead, he began to sing, a sound that started deep in his chest and spread outward like ripples on a pond. One by one, every dragon on the platform joined the song, then every dragon in the city, then every dragon across the globe. But the song was not theirs alone. Through the psychic connection that the purists saw as contamination, human voices began to join the harmony, not in words but in pure emotion, the sound of a species that had learned to love without reservation, to sacrifice without expectation of reward, to choose compassion even when it brought pain. The song grew, carrying across the earth and outward into space, reaching the alien vessels above. Marcus watched through the observation windows as something unprecedented happened. Ships from multiple galactic civilizations, species that had been emotionally sterile for millennia, began to resonate with the harmony rising from Earth. "Impossible," came the purest voice, no longer cold, but touched with something that might have been uncertainty. "The contamination cannot spread through space. Emotional resonance cannot cross the vacuum between worlds." But it was spreading. Marcus could sense it through the connection. Alien beings across the fleet above were experiencing emotions they had forgotten or never known. The song of Earth, carried by the bond between humans and dragons, was awakening something that had been sleeping in the galaxy for countless centuries. The purest ship began to retreat, its weapons powering down not from choice but from confusion. For the first time in their species' history, the crew was experiencing doubt, an emotion that their psychology was not equipped to handle. As the song continued to swell, Marcus realized that Chen Wei-Ming's choice 3 centuries ago had set in motion something far greater than anyone could have imagined. The love between humans and dragons was not just saving 2 species, it was beginning to heal an entire galaxy. 3 months had passed since the day that would forever be known as the Galactic Awakening. Marcus stood on the same observation platform where he had first learned the truth about dragons, but the world around him had been transformed beyond recognition. The terminal had become the first official embassy of Earth to the Galactic Council, and representatives from dozens of civilizations worked alongside humans and dragons in the expanded facilities. The song that had begun with Dracor's voice had spread far beyond Earth's atmosphere. Across the galaxy, species that had forgotten how to feel were rediscovering emotions they had thought extinct. The purists had retreated to the outer rim, struggling to understand how their cold logic had been so thoroughly defeated by something as simple as love. "Inspector Chen," came a familiar melodious voice. Marcus turned to see the Preserver representative approaching, a being of crystalline beauty whose form seemed to shift between solid matter and pure light. The Galactic Council has reached its decision regarding Earth's proposal. Marcus felt his heart racing. For months, humanity and dragonkind had worked together to draft a proposal that would change the fundamental structure of galactic civilization. The Emotional Heritage Initiative, as it had come to be known, would establish Earth as a center for teaching other species how to rediscover and maintain emotional connections without sacrificing technological advancement. What did they decide? Marcus asked, though he could already sense the answer through his enhanced psychic connection with Dracor, who was perched nearby. The proposal has been unanimously approved by all member civilizations, the Preserver announced. Earth will become the first compassion sanctuary in galactic history. Species from across the galaxy will send their young here to learn what humanity and dragonkind have achieved together. Marcus felt tears of joy streaming down his face as he realized the magnitude of what they had accomplished, the burden that his ancestor had unknowingly accepted, the emotional cost of saving the Dracani refugees, had become the foundation for healing an entire galaxy's emotional wounds. Dracor's great head lowered until his ancient eyes were level with Marcus's. The choice has been made, Marcus Chen. Humanity and dragonkind will maintain their connection, but now it will be conscious and mutual. We will share both joy and sorrow, but we will face them together. Around them, the platform filled with beings from across the galaxy, some humanoid, others so alien that Marcus's mind struggled to process their forms. All of them had come to witness the signing of the Emotional Heritage Accord, the document that would officially establish Earth as the galaxy's center for emotional learning. Navigator Zix approached. Their opalescent skin, now showing patterns Marcus had learned, indicated deep satisfaction. Inspector Chen, there is something you should know. The container I brought to Earth contained more than just your ancestors' memories. It also held a message from the last High Council of the Dracani civilization. Marcus felt a chill of anticipation. What did it say? Navigator Zix gestured, and a holographic image appeared in the air between them, the figure of an ancient dragon, whose scales held the colors of nebulae and whose eyes reflected the wisdom of eons. When the figure spoke, its voice carried harmonics that seemed to come from the stars themselves. To the humans of Earth, who chose love over fear, sacrifice over safety, and compassion over convenience, you have done more than save our children. You have preserved the possibility that intelligent life can evolve without losing the capacity for love. The debt we owe can never be repaid, but we offer this, our knowledge, our wisdom, and our eternal gratitude to a species that proved that the universe is not condemned to cold emptiness. As the holographic message faded, Marcus felt the weight of 3 centuries of hidden history finally lifting from his shoulders. The secret that had burdened dragons and unconsciously shaped humanity was now transformed into a source of hope for the entire galaxy. Dr. Chen approached, her tablet displaying readings that would have been impossible just months earlier. Marcus, the psychic resonance is stabilizing at levels we never thought possible. The connection between humans and dragons is actually getting stronger, but it's no longer causing unconscious emotional bleed-through. Both species are learning to consciously share and support each other's emotional experiences. Director Harrison, now bearing the title of Earth's first galactic ambassador, joined the gathering. The first group of young aliens arrives next week, she announced. 12 different species, all wanting to learn how to rediscover emotional connection without losing technological capability. Marcus looked out across the transformed terminal, where humans worked alongside dragons and representatives from civilizations across the galaxy. Children played with alien beings whose forms would have been terrifying just months ago, but who were learning to express the gentleness that had been buried under millennia of cold efficiency. Dracor, Marcus said softly, do you ever regret that your people came to Earth? All the pain, all the grief you've carried. The ancient dragon's response came through both voice and the psychic connection, carrying depths of emotion that no words could adequately express. Marcus Chen, watching your species grow in compassion and wisdom, seeing alien children learn to laugh and cry and love, this is not burden, but blessing. The grief we carried was the price of survival. The joy we share now is the reward for never giving up hope. Above them, the first rays of sunset painted the sky in brilliant colors, while the lights of alien vessels created new constellations among the stars. Marcus realized that humanity's age of isolation was over, but their age of true connection, with dragons, with alien civilizations, and with the fundamental forces of love that bound the universe together, was just beginning. The customs inspector, who had once worried about routine baggage inspections, now stood at the center of galactic transformation, knowing that his ancestors' choice 3 centuries ago had not just saved one species, but had preserved the possibility that intelligence and emotion could evolve together throughout the universe. As dragons and humans joined their voices in the evening song that had become Earth's gift to the galaxy, Marcus understood that some inspections revealed treasures beyond imagination, and some duties carried rewards that lasted for eternity.